Hello, it's Scott with Zenvi AI. Thanks for joining the Systems Are Sexy podcast today. I'm joined by Isaac Holtz. He's the Director of Field Operation at Sharpline Communities. They are a growing real estate investment and management company focused on creating quality living experiences across the Midwest. Isaac's journey is taken from management and maintenance to leadership, giving a unique perspective on what it takes to build high performance teams. So, welcome to the show, Isaac. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good opportunity to chat and learn a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you guys give us an overview? I know I touched on it briefly, but what a little bit about what your role is and what you guys do at Sharpline?
Yeah. So my role is, like you said, VP of Field Operations. So I oversee, if you will, like our uh, production side. So we like to think of property management as like you have the sales, which is the front facing property management, leasing agents, and then fulfillment, which is us on the back end doing all the grunt work and making sure the product is ready to go. So I do the, product delivery, getting units ready, taking care of the actual buildings and all that good stuff side of things. So I run our maintenance techs and our CapEx teams and our HVAC guys and plumbers and all that good stuff. So that's my day to day. Now that I'm on the leadership side, it's more of like structuring the hierarchy, making sure we have the right talent on our teams, making sure we have the right ways to measure progress in place and systems to make progress. So yeah, that's been a little bit of the look at what I do right now. And then I can touch on Sharpline a little bit too. So Sharpline Equity is the holding company, the syndication company that actually goes out and purchases the properties, puts everything together. And then Sharpline Communities is our self-management arm. So originally they were third-party managing most of their properties, and then they transitioned over to self-managing. And now we self-manage 100% of our portfolio, which is like just over 1,500 units right now.
Great. Okay. So you've got properties, Kansas, Missouri, some in Ohio and Oklahoma. How do you guys decide which properties or markets to pursue?
That's a very good question. So Chris is our visionary. He's one of the co-founders of the company, Chris Jackson. So Chris, I would say, is kind of our market analyst and the lead on feeling that out and making decisions based on like what you just described. We've entered into a couple of different markets and we've felt out like which ones are producing the best returns, which ones we're most operationally efficient in. And Kansas City has been by far our best market for our operations and how our properties have performed. We've had success in other markets, but they're just not where we want to scale. So I can't tell you exactly why Chris decided to enter Kansas City. I think everybody just kind of saw it as a cross section between a lot of different money moving around the US and saturated markets where people are kind of pushing into the safe Midwest. So I think there's New York investors who are, putting money into Kansas City. There's people from California he was talking to who are interested in the Kansas City/Midwest area. And then you've got people from above and below. Like obviously Chicago's a very tough market, for people to make or break it in right now. So you've got some of that attention migrating down south towards us as well. So I don't know Chris's exact reason for wanting to enter Kansas City initially, but he did. And that's where they bought up about 500 to 700 units to get them going. And then they entered a few other markets as well. Like you mentioned, Oklahoma City and Columbus. The real challenge is like when you first enter a market, you don't have scale. So you don't have a lot of leverage to negotiate. And we're still kind of in that type of realm, if you will, in Columbus and Oklahoma City, where like if you have 100 to 150 units, it's a decent number, but you don't have near the leverage as if you have 900 to 1,000 to 1,500 all in one area. So that's what we've seen on the other ones. And we don't know exactly what our strategy is going to be for each of those going forward, but we know we're going to double and triple down on Kansas City going forward just from like what we've seen on what Kansas City still has for untapped potential.
Great. I know you had mentioned Chris actually moved there, and one of the things we chatted about before is about real time communication. What does that mean for you guys, like day to day, real time communication?
Yeah. I mean, this morning was a good example of it. So Chris is driving to the airport to fly back to Kansas City, and he'll be here for a couple of weeks straight since he lives here now. But he called me at like 6 a.m. this morning. I was in the office already. So we talked for like an hour and a half this morning, just going over in real time, all the things that he's going to have to be. Chris is very hands-on, like he's an owner, but he's very hands-on with the operations side. So that's why we have these type of like operational conversations. We walk through, we're doing a lot of role changes and hiring out some new leadership roles within the operations department, if you will, like maintenance supervisors and stuff. And there's been some title changes. So we went through in real time, like what that's going to look like. And the main reason we're touching base on it is I'll be out for the next couple of weeks on vacation. So he wants to make sure like there's no ball drop when I step out for him having to pick it up and make sure he's communicating with them. But like when we talk about real time, it's just being accessible to one another, like within reason. Him and I both know we're kind of workaholics and like we enjoy talking about it. Like a 6 a.m. call this morning was fun for me. I just paced around the office for an hour and a half, got some steps in, then got to talk to him about operations. It made me feel better about the vacation, knowing, like what our game plan is, what are all the meetings and boards we need to kind of have lined out so that 2 weeks flows smoothly. And then, like him moving to Kansas City, like you said, is a huge thing. Like there's really not a good replacement for being next to each other. I mean, you don't have to be sitting at the same table 24/7, but being even within the same office building, and especially within the same city, it's hard to replace that. I mean, we've operated with him mostly remote here for the first couple of years, and it was very good communication. Phone calls are awesome, but there's not a really good replacement for being able to pop in on each other and just have some of these strategy conversations. And it double and triple goes for when things are not going well, which is just inevitable in business. So like when times are really, really tough, it's nice to be able to see people in real time and have that real time communication of like, you're kind of eating that shit sandwich together rather than like, I'm sitting here in Kansas City up to my knees in crap. And, he wants to help, but he's not here physically to be able to assist. So from the operations side, that was an example of like a Chris and I conversation, but that real time is shared amongst all of our senior leadership team. Krista is the other founder of Sharpline, and she's the same way. She's very real time. And our fellow executive, Sarah Robertson, is very real time as well, super easy to get a hold of and talk about, high level strategy or anything that's going on in the company. So we try and demonstrate that ourselves because we want our team to feel, they want to be available in the same way. And it's not fair to us to ask them for real time communication throughout the day on a certain property or on a certain project if we're not going to be accessible and real time ourselves. So real time is kind of an umbrella term, but it's just accessibility and commitment to a shared mission really is what real time stands for. It's not just doing as little as you can to get by and trying to handle everything over Slack. It's being accessible for phone calls, in-person meetings, and dealing with the really nasty stuff together so that it doesn't feel so bad.
Do you guys use any tools or systems to help you stay connected? Obviously, you guys, if you're not working together, are there systems that you guys have been found effective with that many people that you guys can communicate well to each other?
Yeah, I mean, we're still feeling out some of the growing pains, but Slack has been really good. Slack's continuing to get better. And maybe some of these features are good things that they've had that I haven't used previously, but Slack's great for onboarding, bigger group messages, for channels. Like we have a channel for each property, and then for different projects, sometimes if they're big enough, we'll have a channel for them. But it allows you to post in canvases in there. And that way, if there's certain workflows or just documents or checklists that you need done, everybody can see them. And then Slack's like obviously just a real time instant messenger. You don't have to worry about somebody having Androids and somebody having iPhones and it showing up in different color texts and stuff. Like you can see it all up to date in there. So Slack has been a huge one for us. I mean, in terms of communication, that's been that. And then we use Monday.com for project management currently. So, it's a pretty customizable platform for us to put all our projects into.
Got it. We had talked earlier about KPIs. I think maintenance was one of those, but
Yeah.
what KPIs are you guys looking at to really drive your business? Like resident satisfaction, turnover? What's important to you guys?
Yeah, I'll be able to speak a little bit better to the maintenance KPIs just because I've been more hands-on with that. We had chatted about it a little bit before, but I came up on the management side, so I was an assistant property manager and leasing agent basically starting out, and then a PM, a property manager, and then a district manager, and then eventually, when the time was right, I actually transitioned over into this role on the maintenance side. But I helped establish some of the KPIs on that side, but our district manager and our VP of asset management are the two that are really hands-on with them now, and they do an exceptional job. So I'll speak to them, but I'll probably do a disservice to how they kind of like see them now after I've been out of it for a little over a year. But some of the stuff that we measure on the management side is like resident satisfaction, like you said, and churn, or basically resident turnover. We look to see if that makes sense. So sometimes if you have a tough property manager, even if it's not a normal time of year, you'll see more turnover just because they're not handling the property well, they're not handling requests well, they're not communicating with the residents, et cetera. So that could be a big one that we try and look out for resident turnover to indicate if we're having management or maintenance problems, like if we're not fulfilling on the side of like work orders or delivering units on time or delivering them in the quality people expect. That can be cause for vacancies and turnover and stuff like that. So a resident turnover can tell us a story, but it doesn't tell us the whole story because then from there we need to dive in and say like, why is this occurring? Or if it's a normal time of year, like we have student housing in Lawrence, like we're going to see out of the 178 units that we have out there, we're going to see 60 to 70 move outs every summer. like clockwork, just because it's, in 2 months. So it has nothing to do with our property manager. It has everything to do with the environment. So we dig in a little more to see like why that turnover is happening, but it is a good indicator of like something's occurring. Is this normal or abnormal, and what can we do to fix it? And that's where the other KPIs we try to measure come into play. On the property management side, we'll see things just like obviously like occupancy and collections. Like if we have a bunch of people going delinquent, and we know we're going to have to, go through the eviction process, we're going to see turnover. We know to expect that turnover, not necessarily the property manager's fault for trying to collect on rent. And that will give us some context for the turnover. And then some other stuff on the property management side is just leads, following up with leads. How many leads are we getting in? How many are we converting into tours? How many tours are actually showing up versus not showing? And why is that? Like, what can we change with our scripting, with our messages and follow up to make that better? Frequency and cadence. And then we see from those tours that did show up, how many of them actually turned into applications. And then for the people who applied, how many of them are actually turning into actual leases and moving in and showing up, moving in and all that. 'Cause there's a lot of like little micro things throughout that funnel that matter. So for example, like if you're getting a bunch of applications, but they don't qualify, it's like we need to go back and start to pre-qualify better, because we're wasting our management's team their time with these tours. If we could have pre-qualified them during the introduction, like, hey, do you want to schedule a tour? And they're like, yeah. And you just say, okay, here's our 3-4 whatever pre-qualification things before you show up. Like, do these are these things you qualify for, whatever, just so you can save them some time if the tour isn't going to be qualified. So you can look at each step and how to improve it. Like I talked about with timing and cadence in that funnel, but those are the KPIs we measure along the leasing funnel, like the leads, conversion, closing ratios. And then on the maintenance side, we're still feeling out some of this, but resident satisfaction after work orders is a big one. One thing we measure is by property unit count. So if I use a 100 unit property, for example, we try and keep the work order, resident requested work orders, under 8% of the unit count. So if it's a 100 unit complex, we try and stay under 8 resident requested work orders, and we try and make sure none of them go over 7 days on any running tally. Because if you get something if you have a bunch of units you're trying to get done and somebody puts in something about their blinds, like you might have to put it off for a couple of days, so you're not pulling your guys off a project to go hang up a set of blinds when it can just get done with all the other work orders on Thursday and Friday. It's just about like communicating to the resident that that's going to be the case. So the 8% of resident work orders is one that we measure right now. We put it on a graph so everything's color coded and we can see how all the properties compare against one another. It's kind of a competition amongst all the properties to try and stay in the green, try and stay under 8%. There's that. And then we look at labor hours logged for our guys. So this is just tracking like time logging and efficiency for our guys. But we try and make sure they're all putting in a certain number of hours each day in AppFolio. It's a property management software. So if they're going to get paid for a 40-hour week, we try and make sure that they're logging 30 to 35 hours in our property management software of what they're doing, whether it be grounds, unit turns, whatever, resident work orders, exterior stuff, CapEx, whatever they're working on. And that just makes sure that they're following through with the process and protocol of like time, photos, and notes on every work order, so we can make sure they're taken care of. And then when it comes to unit turns, which is a huge place where you can burn a lot of cash on vacant units, we try and measure how many vacant units do we have on average, how long have they been vacant. We're trying to stay under 14 days at all times for those, for the properties. And then we look at so far quarter to date, how, like for all the units that have been completed, on average, how long did it take you? And that way we can incentivize the team moving and staying under 14 days for unit turns on that as well. So, and I broke down a lot of KPIs. We can dive into any of them that you're interested in on like how we measure and how we came up with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. There's a lot of numbers there, obviously. I did want to, you had brought up something I want to ask you about was leads and how do you generate leads, but also how you qualify them. Is that all done manually? Like, what does that process look like for you guys?
I think we talked about this a little bit, but like our district manager is kind of in charge of rolling out the actual like marketing campaigns. He works with our VP of asset management for that. And he knows this way better than I do, but there's been a merger between rent.com and Zillow. Zillow bought rent.com, and we've seen Zillow/rent.com now being our best performer for producing leads, even above apartments.com. We still run both, and then you can upgrade tiers and packages to push to social media and get a little more aggressive. But most of our leads come from there. We advertise our phone numbers, publicly so people can call in, and we have an answering service that documents that and pushes it into an email for us. And then we have a VA that pulls all of that and enters the new guest card into AppFolio. That probably makes up 10 to 15% of the leads. I'd say apartments.com is another 10 to 15%. And the remainder is pretty close to being Zillow/rent.com. Like it's that heavily distributed. There's times that apartments.com, I think for some properties might be up to like 25 to 30% of the leads. But I think almost always it's Zillow and rent.com, especially for our townhomes are huge for Zillow and rent.com. So that's where most of our leads come from. And that's how they get into this. So rent.com and apartments.com, which is like 75% of our leads, have like a native integration with AppFolio. They just populate the guest card, which is really nice. And once that happens, it kicks off a workflow for Lisa AI within AppFolio. So we can customize what Lisa does and how she says stuff to a degree. There's certain customization questions. They're not super robust, but they exist. And one of those questions is the qualification. So it follows up with people a certain number of times based on the cadence you set. It has certain qualifications that it will send them based on what you put in there. You make sure that they're compliant with fair housing. And then, throughout the process, when they're ready to set up a tour, like it'll show them a calendar where they can select their time. And then either before or right after that, it'll qualify them and just be like, hey, that sounds great. Just confirming you meet these qualifications. I'm guessing it's before because it wouldn't make sense to schedule a tour and then, disqualify them. But that's kind of the flow that Lisa AI goes through. And then for the remainder, Lisa only gets activated for those native integrations. So if somebody's put in manually, like they come into the office and they say, hey, I'm looking for an apartment, they get put in manually for whatever reason right now. Lisa doesn't kick off her workflow on those. So our property managers then pull a report and they follow up with everybody 3 to 9 times, depending on responsiveness and all that good stuff. Emails, texts, and phone calls, basically.
We chatted before. You had mentioned we were talking about AI technology, and you had mentioned, I think you said it's going to swallow up more and more tasks. Where do you think property management is going to benefit from automation?
Oh, where is it not going to benefit? I mean, we've already seen Elisa do some amazing stuff, and it's been great for our property managers because the people who are truly high performers and do well with autonomy do better when you offload these repetitive, redundant tasks that they don't necessarily need, like their critical thinking capabilities for. Sending the same text message template for the 700th time doesn't really do anything for them as a better PM. They need to understand what it's doing in the background so they know how things are working. But I think leasing is super easy, which is why we're seeing more and more AI leasing and even outbound sales for some of these different companies for sales and marketing. AI swallowing that up, and it's going to continue to get better and better, and you're going to be able to train it better and better. It's going to be unbelievably effective. It's going to be better than any human really could be at leasing, and it's available all the time. So if somebody's gets mad at their boyfriend and it's 1 a.m. and they're drinking at the bar and they want to go apartment shopping, Lisa AI is ready to field your request right at that time, which is super nice. So leasing's a big one. I think application follow-up is a pretty simple one as well that AI will get more integrated with. I think customer service wise, the ability for people to reach out and you can program it to talk like a PM. Customer service wise, customer service is such a big piece. People feeling like they're being listened to and stuff. If I can listen to customers and answer some of those questions for them, but also just put in a really organized list for the PM to look at the next day to follow up with people, I think that'll be a huge one. Just questions about their upcoming renewal, being able to talk to them about that, any renewal packages we're going to be offering, rent increases, talking about that proactively. And then the maintenance side is going to be challenging. I'm seeing more and more good AI work platforms, kind of project management platforms for maintenance. But obviously, we're a long, long ways away. We'll see how long, but we're a long ways away from robots grabbing wrenches and doing the actual repairs and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be an inevitable part of the lengthier future. AI will continue to swallow up every task that we can give it, so long as there's an intelligent enough person to train it and there's enough data out there for it to look at to understand how to do it. Like right now, if it tried to learn how to do HVAC, it's such an ambiguous and complex task for it to figure out what to grab and what all these different systems from the last 30 years need. In terms of responding to a lead about what's available, you can really train it on sales, what to do for sales. And you can train it on what, it plugs in and sees what your availability is and it can answer all the questions right away. So there's a spectrum of complexity that it can take on, and it'll continue to swallow more and more of that up. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it'll take on all of the leasing related and property related tasks up until you get into the really high level critical thinking strategy side of things. And then, eventually it's going to be a really good critical thinker and you'll be able to give it super complex ideas and topics of how you want it. It's like, hey, this is what we want to do at the property over the next 3 years. Operate as a senior property manager and execute this business plan with these AI agents. And then you'll still need a physical person doing a lot of stuff, but they won't be so focused on sending out renewals and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. Looking at that workflow, is there, if you could pick out one or two parts of the business you could automate with the magic wand with technology, what would it be?
When you said looking at that workflow, you're just talking about like general, the whole property or just the leasing side?
Well, it sounds like leasing is more of a focus as far as what you guys would implement with AI. So is there parts of
Yeah.
that that you would look at and go, "Hey, man, if I could just have this, that would make my life easier."
I mean, a few things that come to mind. The ability for the agent to take on all leads that get entered, it seems very simple, and I can't imagine we're super far away from that being the case. But the ability for the agent to scoop up all the leads and just be better at, I think the magic wand will hopefully be waved just through like everybody else's demand. Like AI should be able to scoop up all the leads that get entered into AppFolio or whatever your property management software very easily. Like that's just like data entry, and it should be able to register those custom fields of name, email, blah, 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 and reach out to these individuals based on their interest. So its ability to scoop all of them up. And then really it should be able to take them, I'd have to think about this a little bit more, but it should be able to take them from like their initial request all the way to the lease if they know what they want and they like, and you feel comfortable with your templates and everything to have it draw it up. Like it should be enough where you can give it and teach it how you want it to navigate the leasing side of it and application follow up, that it really should be able to take them from A to Z. And maybe it doesn't send the lease, it just prepares the lease, and then it prompts the manager like, hey, this person's ready for this, send it off to, so and so. So that's kind of a magic wand that I would love for it to be able to wave. I don't think it's going to be able to do tours obviously or anything for a while, but yeah, the leasing process should be super doable.
Okay, so one of the goals of the podcast really is to people to learn how others have scaled their businesses. And I'm just wondering, if someone came to you and asked for advice, how you guys have grown or what it's like as an operator or property manager, what would be some advice you would give them to get going?
Advice that I would give people if they're getting started, assuming it's not just a one person show, and if it is, it is. But like, I just think so. Like, this is super redundant from like everybody else that I listen to too. But surrounding yourself with the right talent has made all the difference. Like, our biggest unlocks was finding the right team members and rewarding the right team members for going above and beyond. But finding the right people, if it's a certain task, you might need somebody who's been there, done that. And if it's something kind of ambiguous, you invest in somebody who's really performed well in your company to take on that big cluster of chaos and organize it into like a manageable system where you can implement KPIs and measure progress and make progress as you go. But I think people should be very skeptical of who they choose as their, the individuals they keep around them. And they should be pretty strict with their vetting process. But it's just been unbelievable unlocks for us when we stop trying to do it all ourselves, whether it's some sort of AI integration or if it's a consultant that's able to help us unlock like a knowledge tier that we don't have access to. Or we go out and we spend an extra, X number of $1,000s per year, more than so if we're going to hire a property manager for $60,000 a year, but we can get a really, really elite manager for 70, that $10,000 a year might have saved you, $150,000 a year worth of headaches across, the domain that they're overseeing. So, you can get amazing returns on your investment, but you do have to make sure you know how to vet for that level of talent. And when you're talking to people, you want to have enough conversations ahead of time to really like see, like if you talk to 100 people, you're gonna have a lot better feel for what a really senior person looks like than if you just talk to three and you pick the best of those three. So trying to get a lot of volume of those individuals you talk to figure out what that talent level is. I'm trying to think like strategically for people who aren't necessarily hiring on talent, like what the most important thing is, but just trying to like measure progress as best you can too. I think a lot of people get in the day-to-day flow. I mean, that's where like senior leaders you'll see the measurements spike and go crazy, or they'll help you set new KPIs because they actually know what should be measured based on past experience. But making sure that you're finding ways to be able to measure progress in domains. So if you're feeling really stuck, a lot of times it's because you don't have a good look at what's actually going on or what you're measuring to define what progress is. And we're seeing that a lot of times in different domains for ourselves, whether if we feel stuck on maintenance or we're rolling out like our construction division, we feel stuck because we're not measuring the right KPIs or we're not measuring them consistently enough or whatever that may be. And then even for like lead flow for us to get more deals in the funnel for properties for us to buy. A lot of times if we feel stuck, it's just because we're not looking at the right things. And sometimes you have to go outward to ask people what those are. Sometimes you just need to be more consistent with measuring so that you can actually track whether you're making progress or not.
Got it. So if somebody wants to find out more about Sharpline, where's the best way for them to find out about you guys?
Yeah, so they can go on the Sharpline Equity. If you're an investor, you can go on sharplineequity.com, go on their website, and I think you can inquire about investing. You'll talk to our investor relations head, who's not AI, real person, but you can talk to our investor relations head, or pass along like an inquiry, and we'll get back to you on that. And then Sharpline Communities, you can go to our website there, and I think you can like reach out from there. But we've got pages up on like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all under Sharpline Equity. So you can check those out. And then, you can reach out to me, Isaac Holtz. I don't even know. I think it's like at Isaac Holtz 77. But if you guys have questions, you can reach out to me about multifamily and we can chat more then. I love talking about, ops and multifamily.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Isaac. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for dealing with my technical difficulties. Appreciate being on here. All right. Have a good one.